get in. So, hi, welcome to LegalBlock Activity 4, this time with Andres Junge, correct? With Andres is co-founder of uPort. We are talking about identity on the blockchain, and this time we're going to be with Andres talking about the specific use case. It's a case study of how uPort implemented the self-sovereign identity in partnership with the city of Zug. Okay, so we're going to have here questions. Andres is going to talk about uPort, about the implementation in Zug, and then we're going to go with the questions. We have several questions that the community submit before, and you can also ask questions on the chat. MJ is going to be in the chat taking care of the questions. Okay, so as usual, let's get started with Andres. He will introduce himself. Okay, and then we go with uPort and Zug. Okay.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. Well, I'm Andres Junge. You said it right. I'm working at Consensys, and particularly at uPort. We started uPort with a couple of friends here at Consensys almost 3 years ago now, or 3.5. Yeah, I'm a computer scientist or engineer and working on computers my whole life. And now I'm discovering all these kind of weird things we can do with computers about identity and economics and all that stuff. So it's pretty interesting.
How did you start uPort?
Well, when we joined Consensys, we were like very few people, like 10 people. And we gathered with Joe Lubin. And he says, okay, we need to build new tools for this new world, for this new decentralized world. Okay, what tools do we need? And someone says, well, we need a reputation, or we need identity. We need reputation. Prediction markets and registries and all that stuff. So, okay, I want to build reputation. Another guy wants to build identity. Then we find out that we're building the same thing, and uPort started.
Great. And identity is a huge issue. That's why we're doing this activity, because every time we talk about protocols or we analyze like legal agreement platforms or whatever we are doing, it comes back to the identity issue. So we decided to bring, identity this month to study this issue. And what better than uPort? uPort is like a reference in the ecosystem. How uPort works?
Okay. You have the slides? I think I can go through the slides. That will be like
good. Let me share the screen.
Yeah, I think that will be more structured. Good. Because okay. If not, I can stop forever.
Let me check the screen here for all of you. Okay. Good. Can you see right now?
Yeah, I think you can do like a full screen or something like that.
Good.
Slideshow word. Yeah, okay. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. We think uPort it's more like a set of tools. Like as I said, when we said, okay, we want to build identity for the new world, we decided that we need to research first, because all of us were like engineers or cryptographers or whatever. And we need to research a little bit about identity. So now uPort is like the result of that research. Something is code, some things is know-how, or things we have learned. But we have realized that identity is like core for everything. For every interaction starts with an identity somehow. In the real world, it allows you to access like traditional services like legal and financial and education, like health care or health services in terms of information or benefits, social benefits of any kind. Basically, that's why the state is so concerned about identity at all. But also we have the digital world where we have like web services and other kind of things we need to access and have an identity for that. And that has a problem that is more like cross-border. So like an email or a Google account is more like something you don't care where you are, because in the digital world there's no like state but frontiers, right? The problem with digital identity right now, it's very siloed or centered around the people that has the identity. So we have like companies who have information about you, different kind of services, banks, state. If we define identity of like the unique characteristics that defines you as a person or identifies you or uniquely among a group of people, then all that information, previous one please. All that information right now, it's about yourself, but it's stored elsewhere. It's stored in different silos with problems that it's inaccessible, so you cannot have access to it. If you create an identity on Facebook, you cannot use that identity to prove to a bank, or if you have an identity in a bank, you cannot use it for another company sometimes. It's very inefficient. We can know that Facebook has a lot of revenue on Google because of these inefficiencies. And it's pretty insecure. Accounts get hacked every day. We got a lot of massive disclosure of emails and passwords and credit cards number. Right now here in Chile, we are facing an issue about like credit cards being leaked, credit card numbers, and the banks don't really know how to do anything about that. So yeah, basically that's the problem. Next one, please. Okay, we have been in the identity space forever as a human being, but only in the beginning of this century we have defined that we need something more structured, because we are growing as a mankind a lot. So we build this kind of, okay, if the identity is the issue, so governments or states should care about that. And in the whole world, basically, we have like an institution, one per country, in some countries, one per state, that basically gives you an identity, it says, and tries to collect all the information, like when you were born, or what did you study, or whether you live, or if your gender, or all that stuff. And they provide some kind of document that proves that, issue it by them. So we have like passports, it's issued by the Chilean state or the civil registry, whatever it's called. We have cards or driving license and all that stuff, which basically the idea is like, okay, we're going to have one person that is going to be the issuer, and we're all going to believe that he's going to do a good job. So he's the trusted issuer ever. But then this don't work on the digital world, because it's hard to make standard out of all this data. So on the digital world, people started with digital identity, which basically each one will create his own. And the data is distributed but siloed, so we cannot use that. So basically what we move now, it's that we have federated identity. It's identity you have in different places, but you can share it somehow. So you can log in with your Facebook account to another site and use that information that is stored on Facebook to the other side. And Facebook asks you politely if you can, if you want to share that information with the new site, and you do it. But still, Facebook has your own data. So in case Facebook decided to close your account because of a legal requirement, or because they want, I don't know, they don't like you somehow, they close your account and all your identity data, everything that makes you unique, it's deleted or inaccessible for you. So the new wave right now here is decentralized identity, or what we call self-sovereign identity, which is identity that is owned by the user, controlled by the user. So it's more user-centric. The user is the owner of the data. The user must have the data. The user must control the data. So to build this, it was an old idea, but it couldn't be built because we don't have blockchain. So right now, because we have blockchain, we can build it. So we built a foundation called the Decentralized Identity Foundation, which is basically a standard body where we can discuss about like formats and kind of things. So we can build different self-sovereign identity systems that all are compatible and secure. So the identity of tomorrow, or I can say today because we already implemented, but what we expect for people to use it in the next few years is people has his own data. The user controls the data. You can add every information you want attached to your identity. That information can be like my birthday, my name, but also can be something more soft, like somebody saying, I'm a good cooker, or I'm a good researcher, or whatever. And all these things that, or statements that people say about me, it's part of my identity. So I can use that information to build a reputation in case someone wants, I need to show that information to someone. I can say, okay, this is my, people think I'm cool at programming, or I'm good at cooking some, whatever. So I can not only the line between identity and reputation is very thin, because basically it's the same thing, or we treat it as the same thing. Also, we think that identity should be not attached to a device. It should be controlled by a device. So like you have one identifier for WhatsApp, and you can access it through different devices. We think your identity should be one, and you can control it by different devices. So, and also the security is important. We need to make sure the users control their own identity. And of course, it should be portable and unified. And one important thing is that it needs to be private, very private. We cannot. One thing I heard a lot is like, oh, identity on the blockchain. So we're gonna put like data about people on the blockchain, and yeah, well, that doesn't look so good, because like data is gonna be public. Anyone can use the data or mine that data. So I'm gonna show how we use blockchain for this thing, but basically the idea is not to store the information on the blockchain. It's only the keys. Okay, so self-sovereign identity means like the individual has the ultimate control over their identity and is the final arbiter of who can access and use their data and personal information. And this definition is very old. It's not us. It's like from the beginning of the century. Well, I explained that it's. But here are some keywords that we need to define and be very clear about it. Okay. Needs to be secure, so the user must have control of it. It must be trusted, and what we use here is a term called attestations or claims, or verified claims. You can read it also, which is basically a piece of data which has an issuer, a claim or a statement, and a recipient or subject about the statement. So, and all that is signed, digitally signed, by the key or the identity of the issuer. So an attestation can say, Albi is a good lawyer, signed by Andres. So I'm issuing an attestation saying that this other identity, like Albi, and the statement is he's a good lawyer. And all that is signed by Mikey. So everyone can verify that it's Andres that is the one saying that, and it's about LB. And LB can collect that if I'm a reputable person or trustable person and people trust my judgment on lawyer analysis or whatever. People will say, okay, I have an attestation from Andres. It's a good verifier, so I will trust what he says. Or maybe Albi needs to show a lot of attestation from random people saying that he's a good lawyer, or people that actually were on a case with him, or maybe like a normal institution we still have can be can redefine itself as an issuer. So, for example, like the university can issue an attestation saying Andres is an engineer and signed by the, because like titles and grades basically is that. It's an attestation on someone. Okay, needs to be fast and easy, needs to be private. What I said just a couple of slides ago, it's like the user needs to selectively give permission to access the data. It's not that anyone can access user's data. The user, one part of control the data is to say, I'm giving access to this particular data to this particular person. And also, well, it needs to be, we use the blockchain here, but it needs to work everywhere. It's not for the blockchain. It's on the blockchain also. So sometimes we say uPort is the identity for the blockchain and blockchain for identity. Yes.
So okay. You can use it, you can use it on the blockchain, or you can use it for any other use that it doesn't require blockchain? Exactly.
So use it that way. They don't know, I mean, they know what blockchain is because they want to learn how the system works, but basically all the things that they have implemented, they are not blockchain at all yet.
Oh, okay.
So you can use self-sovereign identity on normal websites or even physical sites. We are doing experiments with people in many use cases, like even access controls to buildings and stuff. Okay, how it works? I'm going to make it real fast or simple here. Basically, we have a mobile app, which is a wallet in terms of holds keys. But those keys are control keys, not identity keys, which that means we deploy a contract, or we have contracts in the blockchain that allows me to say, okay, this key is in control of this identity, but also I can change the contract if I say, okay, this key is revoked, so I have a new key which controls the same identity. So that way, the identity is not dependent on the key. You can lose it. You can it can be compromised, but your identity is permanently stored on the blockchain. So you never lost your identity. We even have program in the contract a way to recover your identity based on other users allowing the contract to change the key. For example, I have a control key in my mobile phone, which controls my identity on the blockchain. And then I lost my key. And I can tell because I lost my phone, I can tell my 5 friends or 3 out of 5 or whatever I have chosen, say, okay, I have a new phone, I have a new key, please tell the contract that this is my new key. And the people, my friends, recover my identity. We call that social recovery, because, well, you're going to read about that everywhere. And with that identity, basically, that's the identifier that you control. With that identifier, you can attach, or you can say, okay, this are my keys, my signing keys. And then I can start signing attestations about other identities or issuing credentials to other users. And the government can issue credentials. I can issue credentials, banks, other people, you name it. We can start with peer-to-peer attestations, like I can say my neighbor is a good neighbor, and if he gets like 10 of those attestations, he get like whatever. And also governments can attest, like I'm Chilean or whatever. And also we think that, for example, in the future, the doctor that sees me being born he can give me an attestation saying, okay, he was born from this mother on this particular day and time, and probably that's the father, unless someone came with another attestation about like DNA test or whatever. So basically, we are not going to need a centralized authority to store all that information, because we are going to store it by ourselves, and that will create or build our identity and reputation. Next. Okay, so we have done a lot of research and built a lot of stuff, and basically when people say, okay, what is uPort? Well, it's a self-sovereign identity solution. We have built the mobile app, we have built libraries, dev tools, standards. We are building right now like what we call a hub, which is basically a place to store your attestations or your information. Right now, it's only stored on the phone, but we want to make it a way for build something you can run, and other people can ask to your hub, your identity hub information, and you can selectively decide if you want to share that information or not.
Okay,
so yeah, sure.
For the developers here, because we sometimes have people with, you're using standards 725 and 735 for the claim of identity, just to clarify that, and we move on.
Okay, 735, it's a contract for identity. We are not using that because we think that has privacy issues. Your information is stored on the blockchain, so we think you have no gain doing that. So we have another standard for a registry about identity data. If you want to make that identity data blockchain consumable, like for example, if another contract wants to read your identity or some kind of information about your identity, but you need to disclose that information to the contract. It's not the identity on the contract. So yeah. No, we're not.
Okay, that's good, because as you move on with the explanation, we have a lot of questions that we're going to check after this about privacy. That where I brought the thing of the standard, so you can briefly explain this about the why one standard yes or not. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So well, we have a big repo. We have a lot of information there about code, issue attestation, verifying attestations, etc. Right? So, uPort identity is basically a permanent identity. It's in terms of like if you lost your keys, your data is still there. It's so we call it a self-sovereign identifier, which is anchored to a blockchain, and it's controlled by the user with a controller key, with a private key. And also we have a hub, the identity hub, which is controlled also by the user, that stores information about the user. And also the data that we store, we have information about that. It's like what we want to store, like verified claims, and in a standard way, so people can interact with it. And it's a basis for reputation and preferences and everything. Okay. Also, because we are using Ethereum keys and the data stored in Ethereum, it allows Ethereum developers to build dApps or contracts that can interact with people that have some sort of identity. So sometimes a dApp or a decentralized application needs to, for example, issue tokens, and he can issue only tokens if the key or the recipient of the token has been gone through a KYC process. So someone can issue attestations about the user, like saying, okay, he's not part of the terrorist list or the OFAC list or whatever list, and we have checked him and we have checked the funds or whatever the KYC process is, and we can issue an attestation saying that he's clean, or he can participate in the token sale. And that attestation can be stored by the user, and when the user interacts with the token cell decentralized application can ask him, okay, do you have a KYC claim or attestation? And the user can show that if he wants. And the decentralized application can say, okay, you are verified by one issuer that I trust, because I can say, okay, these are all these trusted issuers, and that's it. I can interact with the contract. Okay. Well, okay, it's easy. So it's also easy for dApps to onboard users, because the dApp itself doesn't have any data. He doesn't need to build like a login and password or take care about what the keys are, or even store user data. All the data is stored on the user hub. Even the dApp preferences. Like if I build like a contact list on a wallet app, I can store that contact list on my hub. Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking here about attestation. You brought a very good point, which is the KYC. Let's say we can implement a kind of validator model, where the validator can do the attestation of your XY requirements you have to pass the KYC, correct? Like a certified buyer. Okay, good.
Yeah, I mean, you are basically distributing the task of doing the KYC. You can say, okay, I'm going to trust these 3 issuers because I know they do a KYC procedure that I like. It's in line with my kind of policies. So if you want to work or interact with my exchange or my site or whatever, you need to provide me with an attestation from one of those 3 issuers. If not, go to the issuer and get your KYC. Or I can say, well, I don't need, like, I don't know which issuers are good. So if you bring me like 100 issuers, probably that will be right. So give me 100 attestations about that you are not in a list or whatever. And if I can prove that of 100 different issuers, then maybe that's good for my policy in my dApp. So it's very flexible. It's not like the consumer of the attestation can define which issuer he trusts, or if he will trust more on a quantitative kind of thing instead of a specific issuer.
Okay. Before we move on to the SUG use case, I don't know if we can continue with that, or we have more to say about uPort. I see there's no questions on the chat yet. If you want, based on this first 30 minutes, you can start submitting your questions on the chat. But let's see. Now, are we going with SUG, or we need to understand more uPort before we go with the
No,
case?
I want to. SUG is very simple. I want to explain a little bit, and then we can talk more on that. It's not like a very big thing.
Okay. So are we moving to SUG now?
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, it's part of the thing, because that helps to understand how the thing works. So in SUG, basically, they decided they want to build like a digital identity because there were a lot of companies incorporating there. I don't know if you know, but SUG it's called like the crypto valley. So a lot of crypto companies are moving there. They are opening bank accounts and interacting with the local city hall. And so basically what they say, we need a digital identity. And what is the next cool thing? Let's build it a self-sovereign identity. And they decided to use uPort. We didn't know about that until the last day when they're going to go a press release, because everything was open. So they built it and then they explained what they did it. So it's not a use case we developed. It's like they developed themselves. We're very happy about that because that means people can use our tools without even asking us. So good. Basically, how it works. First step, like in the top left, basically you go to the Zug City Hall web site, and it tells you, okay, you need to download uPort app in your phone and create an identity on your phone. Okay, so you go download the app, the mobile app, and put your name, whatever information you have. And then you go to the site again and says, okay, you have a uPort identity, please share your identifier and your data, like my name, my birthday, all that stuff. And all that stuff is stored on the Zug server. And then you physically go to the Zug City Hall, it's a local registration office. It's a small office in the middle of Zug. And you go there and they say, oh, I'm come here to verify my identity. And basically they say, okay, I can see your uPort ID is whatever. And please verify yourself with something. And then you show your passport or your ID card or whatever you have to prove your identity, whatever they trust. And if they trust you and know that you are a real person and you are the identity you claim to be, and also if you live in Zug, if you don't live in Zug, they won't give you anything. I try. They will issue an attestation saying you are a Zug citizen and this is your name and this is your I guess his name, citizenship, and like a passport number. Well, I'm not sure. Some basic
license.
Yeah, and basically that is issued by the city of Zug. So that's the issuer, and that attestation gets stored on your phone, and which right now is the only app we have, and then you can use that credential, that attestation, to access government sites or Zug sites. So when you want to see the latest resolution on the city hall kind of thing, you can go and log in with your Zug ID, with your attestation that you're a Zug citizen. And also, since everything is public, private or public organizations that are not part of the city of Zug can also use that attestations for something else. Like, for example, if here in Chile I want to give like a city tour only to Zug citizens, I can ask them for their Zug attestation or the Zug credential, and I can be very sure that this credential is issued by the state of Zug, so they're citizens of Zug, and I can give them the benefit or whatever.
Okay.
So it's an open system. The city of Zug decided to build this because of basically two reasons. One, they like to be open, so they don't need to build stuff. They don't need to build every integration. Like if a bank wants to integrate with the identity, they don't want to do that. So the data is there. The data is on the user. So the user, you can ask the user for the data. And on the other side, they don't want to have user data on their platform. So in case like they don't want to have like a user leak or information, because seems to be that being a Zug citizen is some kind of thing that you want to keep private. I don't know why. So they don't want to have like a database of all the Zug citizens that can be leaked. So basically, the data is not on the citizen, on the city hall. The data is on the user.
That's very important to know, because there was a question. You know, who owns the data here? Well, the citizen, not the city hall. Perfect. In terms of user experience, when let's say I'm in Zug and I have my digital identity with Zug, should I use an address, an Ethereum address, in terms of user experience, or is just the code? I mean, how it works? What do you use?
Okay, basically, you have in the phone you have the key, which controls your identity, which is on the blockchain, and then you have attestations issued by the identity of Zug, which is also on the blockchain. So we try to abstract all that stuff. So basically, when someone wants to ask you for an attestation, the consumer creates a QR code with all the information he asked, and then you can scan that QR code with your uPort app, and that will pop up a window saying, this website, door, clerk, whatever, is asking for this information. Do you want to share? And if you say share, the attestation is sent to the consumer, and the consumer can open the door, give me access to the website, whatever. So for the users, basically QR code scanning the first time, because we also added on the QR like a more direct communication channel. So if the consumer requires more information, then he can send it directly to the phone, so the user doesn't need to scan another QR code. Basically, it says, oh, this website is asking for another information. Do you want to share again or not? And basically, you are interacting with requests on your phone.
Okay, good. Yeah, so it's good to know. Okay. If there's a question about Zug on the chat, usually what we do is we go first with the questions from the community that they have been submitting during the week, and then we go with the chat. But in this case, is a question about this Zug case. And the question here is, in the Zug case, can an identity be revoked? How will the process work in that case?
Okay. What you revoke here is attestations. You cannot revoke an identity. You basically you revoke in the attestation, and you store the revoked attestation on the blockchain, or a hash of the revoked attestation on the blockchain. So the consumer verifies that the attestation it's right, but also it verifies if the attestation hasn't been revoked by the issuer. Yeah, so it can be.
And any other modification should work in the same way, correct?
Yes, yes. Also, the attestations have like two timestamps. One is not before, and another one it's expire at. So some attestations you need to revalidate it, like they only live for a year or something like that. So you need to go every year to be revalidated, or maybe if you like prove something, maybe they can send you an attestation automatically every year or month or day.
Okay, I would like to go, because this is the case study here, Zug, but I would like to go to the next slide, which is the, let me put it here, oh, sorry, is the platform layer, protocol layer. Just a brief explanation about that. I know it's very technical maybe for lawyers, but it's good to, you know, so they understand how is, I mean, in an easiest way possible, try to get the whole picture here of how the identity works.
Okay. We wanted to build a complete solution. So we need to build a lot of stuff for that. We need to build contracts. We need to build, we basically the first layer is that we need to build standard. Like, okay, the attestations are going to have this format, or the identifier of the each identity should have this format. It should be compatible with other identity platforms. And the way people ask for information needs to be in a standardized ways, and the information is stored needs to be in a standardized way. So we have built like a lot of documents explaining what decisions we took for each format and messaging format. So this is what we call the protocol layer. And on top of that, we did build like tools on the Ethereum networks that can support all these protocols and formats. And also to access those contracts, we build something that helps the user, like a mobile wallet and a JavaScript client, and all those kind of things have like more small pieces like libraries, like a way for websites to request data, or for mobile apps to build to use an SDK. So I don't know if you know what SDK is, like a software development kit. So you can basically add uPort functionality or identity functionality to your mobile app, libraries for verifying credentials, issuing credentials on the server, on the browser, connecting the browser with the phone needs some kind of messaging server. We build a messaging server. We said, oh, if you want to interact with the blockchain, you need to have gas. So we build like a fueling service. So every transaction you send, the fueling server pays for the gas for that transaction. So you basically just approve and click and yes, no, and you don't care about having Ether for that because somebody else is paying for that. Sorry,
why am I asking? Sorry, this. Because when we talk about identity, and we're talking here with lawyers, it seems very easy. It seems like, oh, it's like a digital signature that I can use. And it's good to know that there's a lot of thing behind. And why are still, talking about identity and some other projects working on that? Okay, check the screen and see there's a lot of work behind. We need to understand this. I mean, these activities are called product. This topic is protocols and self-regulation protocols, because we're trying to give a sense of self, identity regulation. Whatever we're going to do, it depends on the protocol. But it's good to see this screen here, so you can understand that it's not about getting an Ethereum address. And maybe you have 2 more addresses validating or attestating that, and that's it. For the adoption, actually, this last part you mentioned here, the application layer, is very important, because not everyone's going to open, a MetaMask and submit address and get a validator. That's something that this uPort project is working on. It's a mobile app, and there's a lot of things, because we can see here 3 layers basically. It's not just a smart contract and an Ethereum address and go on. It doesn't work like this. So that's the important thing about explaining this without getting into the technical things like the standards and this one and this not. But it's important for you to know that a full identity system is something that requires a lot of work.
Yes. Yes. I mean, an identity is useless if you cannot use it. So everything else is a way for you to use that identity and use other people's identity. So we touch a lot of other subjects here, like key management and UX for the decentralized world and all that stuff. So we work with other people on this too. It's part of
okay. What is the status of uPort right now?
Okay.
First of all, exactly about the project, and then briefly, so we can go with the questions about. You mentioned reputation, and I agree with you. The line between identity and reputation, we're working. I mean, we're walking on this path, and sometimes reputation means identity, and identity can be seen as reputation. So we are, and this is very fine, the line there. With the use cases or the status of the project right now, the trend is more going to reputation or more going to identity in terms of the case of SUP that we are seeing right now?
Both. it's hard to define a use case of being like identity or reputation sometimes. But I think use cases are in both sides. Like people wants to use identity for reputation and build reputation on top of that, like shareable reputation. And people are experimenting on that. Yeah, but like again, it's hard to say what it's identity and what it's reputation. So it's
So shareable reputation, it's a good term, so we can go with that. Okay, we're moving with the questions here. Okay, usually we have the opportunity to I mean, people can ask themselves to you. We put the two options. Okay, you can submit the question, you can ask yourself, or you can leave, whoever is moderating the session to ask. In this case, everyone is shy here. Okay, so it's interesting if you see the questions from the community. Well, I see a pattern here in terms of the questions. One is privacy, and the other one is, and that's why they asked the question before, the integration with legal agreement platforms or legal contracts. That's the reason I brought before the thing of the digital signature question. And let's go here with the first one. How can uPort be integrated to a legal agreement platform such as a court or open law to match the identity of the parties with their digital signatures? And there's another, actually, there's another question very similar. Can we use uPort identity to sign legal contracts when we start using platforms that create agreements on the blockchain?
Yes. Okay. First, I want to say that sometimes we use but the words like not good in terms of like right now we have like this digital signature laws and all that stuff, and people think that they have a digital signature that they can use. Basically, that's not true. What people have is private keys and have an attestation or a certificate saying this public key has these attributes, like my name or whatever. And with that private key, I can sign documents or data or structures.
So
right?
that's basic cryptography 101. Okay.
Yes, but I still hear people like I've been in a meeting with a certificate authority, and they say, "Here we sell digital signatures," and it's like, no, you sell certificates. It's not the right thing. Well, anyways, the thing is that here is basically almost the same thing. You have a key, you can sign things with the key, and instead of having an official certificate authority that issue attestations about your key, they issue attestations about an address, which is controlled by your key, and anyone can issue attestations. That's why we call it a web of trust. It's not an official trustee, it's a web of trust. People all over the place can issue attestations about you. Some are more official, some are more like informal, maybe. But then the consumer can trust which ones. Like my wife, it's organic agriculture, so I trust more what she says about some company or some thing instead of the official government agency about organic stuff. So the consumer now can choose which attestation which issuer to trust more. So in that sense, all this system, it looks very similar to the old certificate authority, public key infrastructure kind of thing. The thing that we are doing here is basically we are decentralized the public key infrastructure. It's not siloed too, because a certificate authority can revoke your identity and then you're lost. Here, as I explained it earlier, you cannot revoke an identity. You only can revoke an attestation. So you can still have other attestations if the issuer decided to revoke your attestation. So yeah, to use it with any kind of legal platform, even if it's not smart contract Web3 enabled, you can still use it, and it will. You can ask your users about their attestations. You can share attestations between users. Like, okay, this is a contract with key A and key B, but the guy with the key B knows who is the owner of the key A, and the guy on the key A knows who key B is. So they both know who they are interacting with, but nobody else, because the contract is still key A and B. So that way, we still preserve privacy, but allows interested party to share identity data.
Okay, so it could work more like with private agreements, I guess, more than, I mean, more between the parties and less in terms of government ID. Is the identification of the parties, like maybe on the civil law is with common law is less, but in civil law is like this person, that the name is this, and almost, you know, like this is the song of this person. I mean, the identity of the person is very important.
Yes.
So I guess this question goes on this side.
Yeah, but that way we still can do that. Like I'm working with the local government here on that, and they say, oh, right now I'm going to be the issuer, the attester of this guy is Chilean, this guy has this government ID or tax ID, whatever, and probably a lot of people will trust that because we trust our government. Well, in some countries. So it's not going to disappear, but we are opening the system to anyone, and it's not just the central government authority, the one that has the monopoly of issuing identities. Anyone can do it.
Okay, I'm gonna move on because we have a little time, and the chat right now it's like exploding with
fire.
Yeah. So I'm gonna let's go with this. The questions we received before, and then we can move on with MJ in the chat. Okay. How can a digital identity on the blockchain guarantee security of data? I think we covered this before. When we talk about the standards and who owns the information, correct?
Yes, the standards, we are working all the standards on the DIF, because I saw a question about there are other platforms. Yes, there are other self-sovereign identity platforms. We are all working together to build a common standard base so we can have like different browsers for the same web, basically. That's
the idea. Okay, how can this identity system be brought to another place other than Zug? Like talking with the government?
Yeah, it's a global system. Like people will start using it because like they want to identify people on a community. But if we manage for a global or for a government agency to issue attestations on this platform, that would be great. Like, or I mean, to even not that, to change because the digital signature law, at least here in Chile, it defines that the certificate authorities are the one that verifies the identity. So basically, what they need to do is just issue attestations in another new format, and that's it. You can go buy your same digital signature, and instead of they just giving you the old X509 kind of certificate, they also can give you a uPort attestation, and you can use that attestation wherever is trusted. Maybe by law is trusted in this country, but some other country maybe will think, oh, in Chile they do it right, so I want to recognize that attestation as a valid thing, or not, or maybe no, you need to go to my kind of verifier.
Okay. Here, that's another one. How can this integrate with a permissioned blockchain? What is the pattern?
Since it's keys and contract, you can deploy contracts on the private blockchain. We have done a pilot for Brazil government. They run their own blockchain, and we issue or deploy the contracts there, and that's it. The same mobile app recognizes different networks, so they can choose the right identity for each. Or basically, it's the same identity, but you have different identifiers on different networks, and you can share your attestations from one network to the other if you decide to do that. But we have requirements for implementing this on private networks, and we have tools for that also.
Okay, I have two last questions here, and then we'll go with the chat. How could this proposal for an auction house work in order to have privacy through the bidding process? That is, that complies with AML regulation, but maintaining privacy in front of the public, the third parties, about who makes the reservation of purchase. Do you foresee levels of access to the ID? It's going to be, I think we're talking here about the attributes, correct?
Yeah, but I don't
for an
really get the
AML.
question.
Yes, hard. The question here is hard to understand. It's just a reading, and I don't have the people who asked this. Let's go. Let's see in the chat if it is there. Last question here is, in your opinion, do you see feasible integrating uPort to manage the identity of lawyers of the LegalBlock community? If so, yes. Can you describe some advantages? Actually, the shareable reputation that we mentioned would be great here. Okay.
Yeah, it's why do you need identity at first? Like, if you want to attest you are part of the community, okay, who will attest that? Everybody? Or we define someone? Okay, if everybody, then everybody's the issuer. If not, like, we need to build, we have, basically uPort is the tools for building that, but we need to define what the identity system is going to be for here, but everything it's going to help you.
Good, so we define the attributes and say, we, the members, for example, as a community, we can be the attestation can be done by the members of the community, the same community, correct? As soon as we have the attributes.
But here's the question: it's like, who says someone is a member from this community? I'll be only.
No, or, the same community would be. So, I mean, we need validators.
Like, you are a member if you have 50% of the community saying you're a member, or not. It's like.
Could be, yeah. I mean, yeah, for us, this is decentralized. I mean, the community, everything is about the community. We're just catalyzers in terms of coordination. We coordinate information, that everything is, okay, that's good. We can go over that later, but it's interesting, actually.
It's more philosophical questions than building stuff. When we have solved all that stuff, we can easily build it.
Oh, that's good. We can go over that, actually. Okay. I'm going to pass to MJ, so you can read the questions in the chat, because you are in the chat. We have about like 5-7 minutes more, so I'm gonna go and mute myself and unmute you, MJ, and you go with the questions in the chat, and then we close the session. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Tete.
Okay.
Well, one of these, or actually there's two that are more or less the same, and I was going to ask the same thing too, is how will reputation be weighted so that when, person A gives an attestation to person B, the rest of the community understands that person A is legit. In other words, and also how would we stop something that would be an equivalent of a DDoS? It would be like a spam attack on someone's reputation. So, so if a bunch of people with zero reputation come in and attack someone, then they could easily drive down someone else's reputation. So how do we get around that little loop?
Yeah, well, that problem is called the reputation mafia. Basically, there are some like online games where people like, give me all your gold or I will give you all my bots that they ordered to give you bad reputation. There's different ways to solve that. Sometimes, I don't want to go very technical here, but the solutions here is to build like a curated market of issuers. And so you will trust more the issuers which are higher in the curation list, curated list, and you can go higher or down if what you test it's true or not, depending on what other people think it's true or not. So it's a subject in research. We haven't built anything yet. But yeah, basically, the problem is not everybody issuing attestation. The problem is how the consumer can verify or can check which attestors or which issuers are more trustable for his own requirements. And for what I've seen, the trends goes to token curated registries.
Okay, great. I think you covered the other one that was in the chat, which is basically, how will we harmonize? I'm going to use the normal government lingo here because that's what obviously they've already done this, so we can probably learn from the people who've already created this wheel. The different countries somewhere along the way decided that passports was going to be the standard, and they all have similar formats, and they all accept them wherever you go. So is there anything else you want to add maybe to that, being able to work with other providers of identity so that we really truly do have a sovereign ID, but we have consensus on the protocol so that it can be used anywhere?
Well, that task is being done by the DIF, the Decentralized Identity Foundation. That's why we build it. It's like, okay, we don't want to have like 10 different identities that people will use. It's like having 10 different passports, and it's like having connect with or login with Facebook, Google, Twitter, GitHub, whatever. You want to have like one single one. So we have in the DIF, we basically are trying to standardize everything that makes everything interoperable. And if we manage to do that, if we manage to build a standard, then any government or any institution can issue attestations on the standard, and then that will be can be easily consumed by anybody else in the world. So it's going to be like a consensus on a standard that will help us drive this.
Okay, great. And it might be more like the way that countries use the visa, right? So the passport is the consensus. It's an international standard, but you need to do a quick registration. Typically, when you go to a country for the first time, you might have to get a visa, but it's usually pretty easy. You can do it right there. So I would imagine that's pretty much the same for what we can do with different projects. You're going to have to register at some point, but beyond that, it's you've got the standardization. All right, I'm going to go to the next question here. Have you identified any issues between the use cases of uPort and any relevant personal information regulations like the GDPR?
Okay. When all this GDPR first came in May, I guess, one lawyer asked us a lot of questions and researched all that stuff. And basically, I'm saying this because I'm not a lawyer, but the conclusion was that it fits perfectly, because the GDPR spirit is like user has control of the data, and all the data in our platform is on the user. So if anyone is using uPort, they don't have to to store any user data. So they don't need to define policies to manage the data or care about the data. The data is on the user itself. So a lot of people were asking about, oh, we want to use this thing because we want to be GDPR compliant. And this seems like to be the natural case because all the information is on the control and physically on the user.
Are there going to be parts that will be off chain that could be susceptible to other people hacking in and getting your personal data?
Yeah, everything is off chain because of privacy reasons, but it's not centralized. For example, if you want to know all the Zug citizens, you need to go Zug by Zug or citizen by citizen phone and hack each of those. You can hack one phone and get all the information from that data, or one hub and hack the information from a user. But actually, the data, it's distributed in the user. So you need to get all the data, you need to, or at least a lot of data, you need to go each by each, which is hard to do.
Right. Sounds good. That you got some compliments in the chats, that for Andres, that he did a good job in explanation, a nice, slideshow and presenting the information and, answering those difficult questions because, things about we need to make sure that, we have privacy, some kind of hacker proof. We need reputation. We need to sort of have a separate protocol for that, maybe with these, keeping a registry so that we can say, oh, who I would like to see it automated is kind of my point. So that people who are high up on one of those lists if they give me kudos, it's worth more than some bluehead Facebook person, who has no ID, no reputation, nothing. They just come in and say, oh yeah, he did great. Well, that could be my mom, who of course we all know that.
Yeah, is to make everything automatically. Like when you ask for someone's identity, in the back end, probably he will send a lot of data, but then your side will automatically filter that data and say, who he says, because we have some attestations from people who you trust or not, or like a level of confidence on the information. Yeah, like everything is trying to be abstracted from the user, so you can have a. But it's very complicated kind of.
Well, Andres, it's been a pleasure. We don't have more time because remember we have this recorded and we keep the timing, like for all of the sessions the same. I know Albi wants to give you a special thank you for being here with us. For you, Andres is a busy man. Don't get it for granted that he's like, oh, I have a lot of time. No, he's a busy man.
No, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead, Albi, and we can and after you say thank you to Andres, and everyone can say thank you to Andres in the chat as well. In 2 seconds we close, okay?
Yeah, I only want to say thank you, Andres, because we appreciate. It's an honor for us to have the opportunity to know more about your work. It's an amazing and awesome work, and we're gonna keep in contact and talking about some future things that we can do with LegalBlock, because the tools, the uPort tools, are very useful, are great, and I think that we will continue talking and exploring the possibilities to apply for the better function of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Albi. It was a pleasure. I really love this community.
Okay, Andres, you're welcome. Thank you very much. You're going to keep an eye on uPort and all about identity. You're going to be this month of August discussing this, and let's see the outcome of this activity. Okay. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.